So this is our Games at Twilight revision video for your IGCSE exams, written by Anita Desai. We'll start with a summary. It's basically a story set in India about a group of children who are playing hide and seek. The protagonist is Ravi, and the story explores the range of feelings that Ravi has during the course of an afternoon and an evening playing hide and seek. Anita Desai portrays or shows Ravi as misunderstood by his fellow comrades, by his family, his siblings, and his cousins. And the fact that he's misunderstood makes Ravi feel insignificant, not important. And this is a really sad idea for a young boy who's only maybe 6 or 7 years old, that he suddenly realizes that he's not that important in the world. The world doesn't revolve around him. So the day starts off boiling hot. It's India, it's probably lunchtime, 2 o'clock, and it's really hot and humid. And Ravi feels trapped when his mother keeps him inside. He desperately, like any child, wants to get outside and explore and play. The children are so desperate to go outside that they burst out like seeds from a crackling, overripe pod when they are released from the house. And this is some imagery that we'll look at later on in this video or the next one, depending on the time. The children start their afternoon by playing a very popular game, hide and seek. But Raghu, the older brother, was the seeker. So Ravi feels relief and jubilation. He feels so happy that he's not being chosen to be it. Instead, he was one of the ones who could hide. We could infer from this that normally Ravi is the one that has to do the counting to 100 and be the one who looks for the others. Ravi feels panic as Raghu approaches his hiding place, which at first is not a very good hiding place. And he feels fear as he desperately looks for a better place to hide. He feels small when he is unable to reach the garage key, yet he feels delight and self-congratulation when he realizes that he's found the perfect hiding place to avoid capture when he hides inside the dark, spooky shed. He's so excited that he's found this perfect hiding place, and he's absolutely 100% sure that he's going to win this game. However, as Ravi takes in his surroundings, he feels a slight sense of unease. It's dark, remember, he's in a new place, he's a young boy, and this is intensified by a spider that tickles the back of his neck. Can you imagine being in a dark place when you're a young boy or a young girl, and then you feel a spider on the back of your neck? I would scream. Even now as an adult, I would scream. But imagine being a young boy. After some considerable time in the shed, Ravi thinks of the triumph that he will experience as the winner of the game, and he visualizes himself as a hero. Such laurels that he'll have when he is the winner. At the end, his run for victory, when he charges towards the other children and bawls or screams, "I won!" however, is far from heroic, as he falls over and hurts himself because his legs have gone numb. That means that he can't feel his legs anymore because he's been sitting down in the shed for so long. Everyone looks at him in amazement when he's forced to realize that the other children have moved on to a different game, and when they've done so many things. If you look back at this point in the story, they have played different games, they've watered the garden, they've helped out the gardener, they've done so many different things while Ravi has been inside the shed, thinking that everybody is still looking for him. But nobody even noticed his absence. All this time, no one had remembered Ravi. That's really sad. At this point in the story, at the end of the story, he feels rage, pity, and embarrassment at the disgrace of it all. He's won the game. This is probably the first time that he's ever won the game. Yet everyone's forgotten about him, and it's a disgrace. His misery is compounded at this point, made even worse, and he is left lying on the damp grass with a terrible sense of his insignificance. If you remember no other quote in this entire story, remember this one. He feels a terrible sense of his insignificance. That means that he suddenly realizes that he's not important, is not as important in this world as he thought he was. Remember that young children often think that, and understandably so, that they are the only people in the world that matter. You start to lose that as you get older. You realize that, in fact, you are just 1 in 7 billion people in the world. But for a young child, he probably thought he was the center of his family's world. And he realizes now that that's not the case. So the setting in this story is quite important. It's set in India. Inside the house, it's very hot and stuffy. Yet when they go out to the veranda, it's still very hot and it's humid, but it's less of a feeling of being trapped inside. They feel some kind of release and freedom when they go outside. And the shed that Ravi went to hide in was dark, creepy, and scary. And here's a quote to show that. The shed smelt of rats, anthills, dust, and spider webs. So what effect does the setting have on the reader? Remember, when you're discussing literature, it's always important to keep the reader in mind. What effect do the things that happen in the story have on the reader? And this is one of the ways that you're going to be assessed, recognizing the effects of the writer. So the story opens on a hot summer afternoon in an urban house in tropical India. This means that it's probably in the south of India, not the north. And it starts in the afternoon and ends at twilight. And this is a link to the title of the story, Games at Twilight. And here's a quote to show how hot it was. They faced the afternoon. It was too hot, too bright. The children, who've been kept indoors all day to escape the oppressive heat of the sun, feel confined and suffocated. They feel like they can't breathe because it's so hot inside the house. And when they are finally unleashed, they are filled with joy and excitement. For this story, I think it's important that you try to put yourself in the mind of a 6 or 7-year-old. Remember how excited you were when you were finally allowed to go out to play, and you felt like you had such freedom. You felt probably like you were being released from 20 years of captivity of prison. There is an elaborate use of imagery to describe the setting, as the temperature and the furniture and the geography are slowly unraveled throughout the story. The author Desai gives emotional details related to the setting so that the reader can relate to it. whether they are from India or not, whether they have been to India or not, and they can relate to the characters. And we can use these details of the setting to understand Ravi better. The characters in the story. Let's have a quick look at the characters. So the children are obviously the main characters in this story, Ravi being the protagonist. There are a lot of children in this story. There's brothers, sisters, and cousins, which reflect the strength of the extended family within Indian culture. And as in many families, there appears to be a hierarchy as the children compete for attention. And it's quite clear throughout the story that young Ravi is right at the bottom of the hierarchy because he's the youngest. So Ravi's the protagonist. The characterization of Ravi is an important aspect of this story. Remember, characterization is how an author builds up the idea of a character through what they look like, what they do, what they say, and how other characters react to them. We experience the hunt of the hide and seek game from Ravi's point of view, and thus we sympathize with him. So our sympathies in this story are definitely with Ravi and not Raghu. Raghu is the antagonist. The contrast between Ravi's short legs and Raghu's hefty, hairy footballer legs gives us a sense of the difference in the size of the two boys and encourages us to side with the underdog. The references to nose-picking and snot add a touch of humour to the story, but also remind us of a less sophisticated time in our lives when we were less aware of social niceties. This means that it reminds us of being 6 or 7 years old, when it was okay to pick your nose, it was okay to cry, it was okay to have snot running down your nose, because we were less aware of what society expected of us. He's the youngest child in the family, and he suffers from ignominy, which means public shame, humiliation, and embarrassment. And this happens when he realizes that although he's won the game, he hasn't really, because the game is ended. He's also a social pariah. A pariah means an outcast or someone who has a very low place in society. And this is because he's at the bottom of his family's hierarchy because he's the youngest child. You might also want to make the link with different castes in Indian society. Raghu is the antagonist in this story. He's aggressive, he's violent, he's animalistic. He charged after him with a blood-curdling yell. And we'll have a look at the others in the story in the next video.